adjust.
Well, you know, I already had one there, so it's where the old one down.
Can
So
hire
I'm basically
uncertified teachers.
taller.
But we have to have.
Up to me, I mean, technically.
I don't know how that's
I
not.
didn't tear the old one down, but there was one.
Right.
But we also,
Hello. That's my.
that just recently graduated from.
Yes.
They're working as multi-purpose.
I'm needing a little longer, you know where I can get some?
Yeah, there's some idiot stacked a bunch of them right there on Griffith if you want to go get it. I was telling Matt, I'm having trouble finding someone that wants to do framing work right now. I can't imagine why, but I think it might be the heat.
Yeah, I think.
Right. So I just went and ordered all the materials because, you know, the labor was always the holdup. So I was like, all right, let me order everything. But they fit everything else in the backyard except for that because it was too wide back there.
The position that
So I've got the big pieces of
tough.
So
It's awfully tempting.
Good to see you again, yeah.
Got everybody. All right.
We have a party going here. This is
Good.
excellent.
Ready? I'd like to officially call to order the meeting of the Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation. And I've asked Councilman Myrani Velazquez to lead us in our invocation. Sure.
If we can all stand, and then I don't recall till we do the flag, and then stay standing for the pledge. If we can bow our heads. Lord, we thank you for giving us another day to allow us to come together. We ask that you keep us all in good health, that you enlighten us to listen, to work together, to collaborate for the better of our overall community. We also ask you to keep all our city staff, our first responders, those that are out in the hot weather during the summer, all of those that are taking care of the needs of our community, to please keep them in mind. And we ask you to please please give us peace. And think of all those that are in the world today that do not have the same liberty as we do. In the name of our Lord, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Will you all please join me in the pledge to the American flag? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one, and indivisible.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask you to review the minutes from our May 13th meeting. And once everyone has had an opportunity to do so, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the last meeting as presented.
Thank you, Myrani. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sarah. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. At this time, I'll invite Mr. Sims to lead us in a discussion of the current financial report.
Well, thank you for being here today. It is going to be, I am sad to announce, a very hot day in the city of Terrell. We are having a series of these, and it's a little painful, but we're going to survive. I would say that one of the most interesting things these days is to watch our change in sales tax. I would have said probably 7 or 8 years ago that if we had a year where we had $11 or $12 million in sales tax, we were having a great year. This year will be slightly over $18 million in total sales tax revenue, so that's healthy and positive. That is up from the last couple of years. We are projecting next year to be just a tad bit higher than that as well. That comes in the midst of a lot of change with sales tax. There's always people moving in and changing things out on the industrial side of sales tax that you might not see. I don't mind telling this group that we're in the middle of a little bit of a fight on one of our biggest sales tax providers on the industrial side, and we're still going to be all right, even though we have that little battle going on with who's sourcing sales tax where, and sometimes you get your team together and you try to make sure that that sales tax is sourced correctly. So with all of those ups and downs, I hope that you go by 8 or 9 meals in a row at Texas Roadhouse. They're brand new, and we're happy they're there. So come on down. The current budget for sales tax for the Paddock Board is $915,000. I would tell you that that's probably going to reach $1 million. You can see that $839 year to date right there. If you're collecting $92,000 or so in July, August, and September, which seems pretty likely to me, it would be hard not to get over $1 million, right? You just kind of do the math in your head there. If you start adding another $270,000 to your $839,000, you're going to have a successful year on the revenue side of things. I know that we owed you a cash and bank on this, and somehow I don't have it here, so I apologize for that. But I'm going to say that you've also got about $1.5 million easy sitting in the bank for your overall fund balance. So let's walk through expenses. We did budget some money for park capital improvements, downtown facade reimbursements, the Anderson Building and Griffith Building. We also have the mural project, which doesn't show up on this, but we did make our transfer due to your mural project over to the Public-Private Partnership Fund, so that'll show up as an expense next time around. So I would say good progress overall. Some things that are hard to put your finger on, so let's talk about a couple of those. Luis Pena with our Anderson Building, Griffith Building incentive. Part of that overall package is moving the Hard Bodies gym over into the old Lyric building. And so the package there includes the fact that that mural on the Lyric building is now brand new. I hope you like it. And that is part of moving everything over there. As part of that project, the City of Terrell is using some funds that are not Paddock funds to do the water lines behind the Lyric building. So as we're digging those up, we're going to be spending about $45,000 making sure the Lyric building has fire access. And that opens up the opportunity to actually start spending meaningful dollar amounts on the Anderson building. One of the other expenditures that happens on the Anderson building, again, on the City of Terrell side of things, is the expenditure related to the grease trap and the fire access on the north alley side of it. So that's something that's actually underway as well, which again opens up the opportunity to actually spend this Anderson building line item here. And I'll show you in my PowerPoint later some updates on how we're doing with the Griffith building project. You'll notice I like to refer to buildings by the tiles that are in the ground in front of the building, okay? So later today, we're going to talk about the Jarvis building, and I'll give you a little update on that one as well. So lots of good stuff going on. I would say that you've got a healthy fund balance, and I'm going to talk to you about making sure we've got a very well set up FY23 budget later in the presentation. So happy to answer any questions at this time.
Questions for Mr. Sims? All right. I don't know that there's a call to approve the financial.
No.
report, agree? It is what it is.
Yep, it is what it is. It's just a discussion. Yes, ma'am.
All right, at this time, we'll discuss and consider the Excel soccer field crossing.
So I'm going to have Glenn Caldwell and his team do most of the talking. Glenn's a team-oriented guy, and you can tell that because he's brought a fleet of smart people and advisors here with him, and I just can't wait to see which one he's going to have do the talking on this. I would tell you that last time around, we got to a certain point in this conversation, we said, okay, are we really confident in our numbers? Do we know what we're really going to build as part of this? And then we had, I would say, kind of the expanded conversation of, well, wait a minute, are there not many other things that need to get spent out in this area as well? So I'm not trying to concentrate in this conversation on everything we might do. I'm just trying to get one step of progress going here. I would say that one thing that's important to note regarding the Excel Bridge project is that the city is funding through an agreement approved by the City Council, the Excel Center taking over the booking and management of the outdoor soccer program. So you might recall that there used to be a youth soccer association that would man that and coordinate that and organize that. I would tell you that COVID is just really beating down the volunteer pool of folks that are available to volunteer to programs in the city of Terrell. So we lost that nonprofit. The City Council reviewed that topic and decided to put some money into that. So there's about $30,000 a year, $30,000 in per season in expenses that we provide for overhead for the Excel Center to be running the outdoor soccer program here in Terrell. So when you say, well, who else are the partners out here? Is somebody else paying something? The City of Terrell is doing some of the operational side of making this happen, and we thought that there might be a capital project side of this as well, and that's why we've brought this to the Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation. So I'll be quiet. I'll let Glenn take it over, and we'll all answer questions together.
Thank you, Ms. President. Good morning, Patty Boyd. It's always a pleasure to come before you. As you well know, it's always exciting to see new things happen in Terrell. Ms. Sims briefed you on the future of our soccer program, and we're excited for that, and we thank the school district for being a part of it. In the presentation, one of the things that we do not have currently is connectivity from the Excel Center to the soccer fields. So our goal today is to hope that we're inspiring enough to encourage you to lend favor to this opportunity. So the first slide here you've got is a resolution before you, and most of you probably have already took a brief look at that, but I'm going to skip down to section 2 of the resolution, and that section 2 is proposing that we invest some portion of the $250,000 that it's going to hopefully, obviously not to exceed, but we don't want to box ourselves in because building bridges and installing sidewalks and doing abutments can be fairly expensive. The market changes from day to day. So if I give you a number today, which I'm going to, I can assure you by the time we get everything gathered up and the project started, the numbers will change potentially. Okay, so item section 2, number 2. The City Council, we're hoping that you guys authorize the city manager or his designee to enter into a contract for building a bridge over the drainage easement in Ben Gill Park between TISD Excel Center and the soccer complex in an amount not to exceed $250,000. Here's the fun part. You have to excuse the zigzag, but sometimes when we move data over, it doesn't always line up. The first item here we have is the bridge installation. Now, when we talk about bridge installation, we went out and got some proposals to install a bridge. We're looking at approximately a 10-foot wide bridge so that vehicles can navigate across with equipment, with gear, easily, okay? So the numbers that we're hoping to close that opportunity is $112,000. Obviously, we'd have to build bridge abutments so that the bridge, once it's delivered, it sets on a stable foundation. That number is $15,000, which estimated at $7,500 per abutment. And then we want to do some connectivity. We're estimating that we're going to install immediately 816 square feet of sidewalk. There's a map that's going to give you some linear footage later on. And the number we've got in hand right now to date is $18 a square foot, okay? We also would like to have a little contingency because we may need to make some adjustments on the sidewalk. We may need to extend the sidewalk. There's variations of opportunities. The exact location is pending because in order to install this particular sidewalk and bridge, we've got to do some drainage work. The drainage from Colquitt Road drains down to our lake there at Bengill Park. Some people call it a pond, I call it a lake. It's big enough for a lake for me. And so that's critical. The elevation will change. So depending on the elevation, our goal is to put the bridge in the most shallowest part of the drainage swell, okay? That's really beneficial to us as far as from a maintenance standpoint. That cost we have solid, which is $14,250. We're estimating the total cost for this project to be $165,000. That's our goal and objective. So let's talk about the contractors. We have 3 proposals from 3 different contractors. There's 3 different variations slightly. Bridge Brothers, they came in at $111,386. Of course, that's including installation. That does not include the abutments. Keep that in mind. Bedford, these guys are really good as well. That dollar is $53,250. That does not include the installation. So we'd have to procure a contractor to install the bridge once it's delivered. Contact, they are very popular here. They installed the bridge over there at Creekside that connects, somebody help me, somebody with a sharper mind. I'm sorry? Arlie White Park over to Creekside. So that was a great project. Obviously, they delivered the bridge and we did the install, okay? With contractor support as well, of course. So at the bottom of this presentation, you'll see an estimated cost for installation. We're estimating it's gonna be around $50,000. That means Bedford and Contact we would have to utilize that $50,000, okay? The cost, obviously, we feel for the abutments are gonna be $15,000. That's for both abutments, $7,500 a piece, okay? And stop me at any time, or this is the last slide, I'll go over and then you can ask questions, please. Okay, the sidewalk layout. One of the questions someone may ask, why is the crossing so far away from the door? Well, again, let's go back to the subject matter. We want to place the sidewalk so that the sidewalk transitions consistent with the elevations that are available to us. We don't need a big, huge mound so the bridge sits up 15 feet in the air. So the less resistant location, the shallowest area that we thought would be appropriate for a crossing would be down at the west end of the parking lot of the Excel Center. And the other scenario to that, we can do immediate crossing from the door, the side door that goes into the Excel Center, but then we'd have to run down parallel to the drainage swell, which becomes a problem for us from a maintenance standpoint, erosion standpoint. And by installing on this end, we've got less of that. So I'm thinking in the big picture, long term, the care of it, the aesthetics, this was the most appropriate place. If you could see the numbers there, you're looking at the initial transition coming off the parking lot is about 58 linear feet, and I believe that's an 8-foot wide sidewalk that we're proposing. And then you get into the fun part, which is the bridge, and it's approximately 442 linear feet. Bridges are expensive. And then we'll tie in from there on the southward side of that bridge with another 42 linear feet. Well, the reason I'm asking in the previous slide, let's see, here we're asking for a contingency. My thought is, with a few extra dollars, with a little flexibility, a little latitude, there may be an opportunity to extend that sidewalk from there along the corridor. Do I have a pointer on this? I don't think I do. If you go from to the south along the edge of the roadway, we can get it closer to more of a parking zone or open space access zone instead of dumping everyone out onto that gravel road, which our goal long-term is to put a paved surface there, along with a parking lot, obviously, future goals. So with that, I will open up for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Caldwell?
He knows the questions I always ask are the money questions, so. All right, so the resolution is an amount not to exceed $250,000.
Yes, sir.
Our bid is $165, and that already has a $10,000 contingency. So that's a 50%, like that's a lot of not to exceed. And once it leaves here, that's when, you know, anything can happen, and we've approved it and we're good. But I will tell you that this topic raised quite a bit of social media fun last time. And luckily, the person that ran it said that it was approved. And so we got to see the reaction of the public to a $250,000 bridge. And it wasn't approved, so it kind of worked out great. We got to see the reaction and say, sorry, it was wrong. But that's just a lot of fluff. I mean, there's,
Okay.
Can I just say, if you go back over into the resolution side of it, we're just assuming you guys are gonna make a motion to slot that number closer to Glenn's presentation. So, you know, we just left the number unchanged from last time, but when y'all make a motion, I'd suggest you make a motion for a number that looks like Glenn's presentation, if you're interested in moving forward.
And one of the things that, I don't brag very often. I'm not a bragger, but I'm good at what I do. And I can assure you, I have saved the city millions of dollars that would have otherwise been spent. So I'm praying that the board would have enough confidence in our team to deliver you a quality product at a quality cost. I think we've proven time and time again that we can execute this. We're not gonna take advantage of the opportunity to spend $250,000. And most of you on this board and most of you in the audience know that's not how I function. I'm all about protecting, preserving, and delivering a quality product at an equitable cost. The other thing I'll add to this, you gotta remember, we've been working on this for a while. These proposals, day by day, are getting older. And the longer we continue to extend and make decisions, the more it's going to cost. The concrete initially was about $110 a yard. And I would assure that I'm probably more familiar with the concrete prices than most. You're looking at nearly $200 for a yard of concrete. The labor has doubled, nearly tripled right now. So the numbers are gonna change slightly. And so if we're boxed in at $165,000, we're gonna be back the next couple of weeks. The job's gonna be delayed another couple of months because it takes about, as you well know, sir, with all due respect, it takes about 20, on average, 30 days to get delivery of concrete. And the concrete prices aren't locked in. They're gonna be at the cost when you schedule the delivery. So just kind of keep those items in mind. I'm not trying to persuade you one way or another. I'm just giving you the real world. So that's what we deal with on an everyday basis. And sorry for the long dissertation, but I think it's important to be transparent.
Any other questions, concerns, either for Mr. Caldwell or that you'd like to bring up to our board?
Glenn, when were these figures, are they current?
Okay, so
How current are they?
they're about 3 months old. So as you well know, most of you know, 3 months, the numbers have gone up. And they're working on updated numbers. So that's what I'm banking on. If we wait on more numbers, we can do that. When we get it to you, it's going to change again, so we're gonna be coming back and forth, so.
Mr. Caldwell, my concern is not about the numbers. I don't see the Excel Bridge project in the Parks Master Plan. I see a lot of other things in the Parks Master Plan that, you know, we want to try to fund over time. Obviously, it feels overwhelming to try to do everything that was recommended, but I feel like we do need to try to chip away at the list that was presented. Much time and money was spent that we all agreed was a good plan, and this isn't one of those projects. And I still feel like we're pretty early in the process. Maybe the newness of Paddock is wearing off, but it still feels new to me. We've accomplished a few things, but not a whole lot at this point. Just some, like we wanted to big, you know, come out of the chute projects. And while this isn't a large project in the grand scheme of things, it's going to get publicity. It already has. And I struggle with a bridge in a park that needs so many other things done to it. Even when you look at this picture, I look at the roadway around the softball field, I look at those fences that have been there for 50 years, I look at the no shade structures above the bleachers. I have a lot of heartburn about this project in terms of its priority.
Okay. And we established costs for the roadway, so I'm hoping that that project gets approved here in the near future. We've also received costs for shade structures as well for our bleachers, similar to what we did over at Breezy Hill. We've got that off and to the races. So all of those items are current tasks that we're working on. And I feel confident that you'll see several of those in the near future as well. So.
I kind of have the same concerns, mostly because of the plan. Because again, we all sat and built this plan and we're very much a part of that. So, and I also kind of did some homework and just kind of, you know, I've used the facilities over at the Excel Center and I kind of watch, and I honestly believe, and this may be more that we're putting in a bridge so we can transport stuff to and from the Excel Center, maybe?
Well, let me rephrase some of that. So I'm looking at it from, I'll share this with you from a different perspective. Let's think about safety, okay? So we've got an awesome Excel Center with a large number of parents and kids transitioning now from the Excel over to the soccer field, right? So would we say that from a safety standpoint, obviously we want to do all of the other things that you just spoke of, but none of those are safety issues. I can tell you this is a safety issue. Would you prefer your kid or your grandkid or your niece or nephew to navigate across a drainage swell that's about 10 to 12 feet deep? Or would you prefer them to have an access to transition over to the which it gets busy over there? Or would you prefer them to go out to Colquitt Road and drive around, all around the complex? Because you remember there's a fence that runs parallel to Colquitt Road until you get down to Bengill Parkway, and then come in from a safety standpoint. Or they've got to, as pedestrians, they have to walk that whole corridor to a single gate to access where there's no convenience of parking. There's minimal parking on Colquitt Road. So I'm looking at it as well as a safety benefit. That's one of the largest values for me. And I hadn't shared that with anyone, but that's just part of that, you know,
And I totally agree, there's a safety issue around our soccer field, unfortunately, just because of where it's located.
Yes,
And there's not a whole lot to do that I think you can do with that, because we're kind of landlocked and street locked there. If we're truly talking safety issues, I do believe you can go to some of our areas that are being more used right now than our soccer fields, that there are other safety concerns as well. Again, I agree this might be needed further down the road, but from a paddock perspective, I'm sitting there thinking, you know, we just spent the city, and we just spent a lot of money on the lights, which is so awesome. The city put in the new playground over there, which is, I brought grandkids from out of town to come play on that and watched other kids playing on that. And then I look right next door to the park that's right next door to that, and it's got stuff that's dangerous to me. That well-used court that used to be the tennis courts, I think there are safety issues there. And this is just my personal, if we were gonna put this much money towards something, I'd rather put it towards something that's in our paddock plan, or our parks plan. Because I think we are gonna take heat if we build a bridge.
I would like to point out that it appears there is connectivity from the Excel to the soccer fields along Colquitt Road. So if my family, for whatever reason, were going from the Excel to the soccer fields, I would take the sidewalk down Colquitt Road. The fence doesn't block my entrance into the soccer fields. Now, I haven't been to a Saturday morning soccer game to know where everybody parks. You know, if people are parking here, and in the future, as our soccer program grows, maybe more people will park there and need access.
So can I say a thing that I was going to bring up under items 5.4 and 5.5? And that is that I'm a big believer in process and planning and doing things methodically. So it may be that you guys really could benefit from a joint meeting with the park board. And that won't be easy to schedule because they sort of meet on, you know, evening schedule. You guys are in a daytime schedule. But I think that if I were sitting in y'all's shoes and I had a initial capital plan for the Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation, and I had a park plan that was done in 2017, and we've done a list of things since then, to me, if you want to step back for a moment and say, okay, what would a conversation with the park board and the paddock board generate as the next round of spending that the paddock board might want to do? That may be a more efficient way to tackle this topic. And, you know, the pros and cons are real simple, right? Everything you don't build today, you have inflationary pressure with the construction cost. On the other hand, so that's the con. The pro is that when you build something, you're sure you built the right thing. And I would mention to you the approach that you took with the bathrooms. We're still waiting on bathroom number 1 to be delivered because there's all sorts of logistical delays in this world. We think that sometime soonish, Glenn's behind me, soonish, we will get the first bathroom delivered, and then we'll be able to install it vaguely close to the pool. Then you can go look at it. You can take your grandkids to it. You can take your kids to it. You can say, yes, I would be happy to have 6 more of these in various locations in the parks. Well, then we're going to pull the trigger on that, and we're going to get those installed. It was clearly a cautionary aspect on the point of view of the board to say, let's put 1 in first and decide we like that before we buy 6 of them. So if you'd like to be going that direction with a little bit of caution instead of a little bit of speed, then I'd suggest to you pass on this item. Don't bring judgment down on this item yet, and take the advice I was going to give you during your 5.4 and 5.5, which is, let's get a joint meeting of the paddock board and the park board together. Let's let you listen to a presentation from Glenn about how are we doing in the to-do list of all the park stuff. what's going to be in the city budget next year, because the city is going to try to tackle a few things, but I need to have my budget retreat on the 4th or the 5th before I start rattling off things that Councilwoman Velasquez may or may not agree with, right? So I got to have a meeting for the city, so the city can look at some of the city budget side of the issues. I can give you the preview that you know, we're going to, on the city side of it, I've got to tackle the fact that I'm not sure I can survive another year with the pool slide. And so that's a replacement. That's not the kind of thing I like to bring you guys to just replace a thing. So we're going to talk at the city council about what to do with pool slide. And, you know, that's not a cheap thing to do. So there's going to be city reinvestment in the parks. We're going to continue to reinvest in the parks. We're trying to make sure that we do that on a regular basis. We don't want the paddock board to be the only entity paying for park improvements. We do have a little bit of money that came from a development deal that's going to help us do an additional next step at Breezy Hills. So we've got some positivity in different places. We've got people building houses and paying park dedication fees. That's a little bit of money for us to spend. So there's options there, and I would just recommend if you're looking for speed, then let Glenn get going, pick a dollar amount you're comfortable with, pass the resolution, we'll move on and build that. And if you are interested in slowing it down a little bit, then pass the item, and we'll have a Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation joint meeting with the Park Board before we ask you to spend money on some park improvements. It's up to you guys.
Thank you.
I like that idea, because I know the park board and Glenn and them would, I'd love to hear what they have to say to make sure we want to be in alignment with them. And I know they do hard work. I happen to be very fond of that board, so.
I think everybody but Matt Malone works hard on that group. Yeah.
So yes, I agree. I think that'd be an excellent idea.
Now, I have one question, just, she was talking about connectivity. Is the sidewalk that's shown parallel to the parking lot currently installed, or is that a future plan?
That's there right now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just like those black lines next to it. I'm like, man, that looks like, is it put in?
There's, when I go out there seems to be a steady stream of people who are, hey, I dropped my kid off at the Excel Center, or I dropped my kid off at the baseball fields, and I want to move back and forth between those two parts of sort of the greater park area. And so that seems to be getting good level of use. So.
Yeah, and I think from a Parks Board perspective, this is a project that needs to happen. From a paddock board perspective, is it a project that the paddock board needs? Because he's going on his budget retreat. We need the Parks Board to have a massive budget increase for things like this. We need more money in the parks budget for staff and everything else, but projects like this, I hate that it has to come to a paddock board, use sales tax to build a pedestrian bridge that's needed. You know, that's something I would like to be, you know, at some point in the future, able to just have the Parks Board say, oh, we need a bridge, let's get a bridge. You know, especially $165,000, but that's a pretty big chunk of our annual budget, I'd say. I haven't looked at it lately, but it's, what, 600,000 or somewhere in there?
If you're trying to take that out of general fund, I'm going to tell you we would struggle on that. That would need to come out of the capital improvement fund, or we'd have to find special funding for that.
For my knowledge, our knowledge, does Terrell have a youth baseball program currently?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
Does Terrell have a youth softball program currently?
No youth softball program at this time, but we have a vibrant, believe it or not, adult softball program.
Oh, I'm on a team, I know
Yeah,
that.
so you know that, yeah. And
That's
they
on,
they are actually looking at taking over the youth softball program, which, as you know, they're doing an awesome job. And we're saying yes, 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 yes. So that's the goal for this next upcoming season.
Any other comments before we?
Glenn, the material for the bridge, to have a clearer perspective, because when we compare the current, I'm thinking about the bridge at Bengill by the small pond, by the pond, and then I'm thinking about, so that's a wood with some steel abutments, maybe?
That one, the one over there now, or this new one?
No, the one by the pond,
That's wood.
was
That
steel
is 100%
bottom.
wood, yes.
Okay, and then I'm thinking about the bridge that is at Arlie White and that one is concrete with steel.
Steel, yes, ma'am.
And then, so what would this bridge, when we talk about, installation, what type of materials, if this comes back to whether it's parks, city council, or potential, someone donates funds for it, what did the current quote call for?
Okay, so the replica, essentially it would be a replica of the Creekside Bridge. We call it Creekside, the one between the school and the Olive White Park. And that is a first-class, top-quality product. That's what you'll be getting. You will not be getting what is currently existing at the pavilion at Ben Gill Park. And that material is,
Fan of a bridge like that.
I would say the lifespan on that one, I'm going on memory because several of them had a life cycle, and I believe it's 25 years before there's any maintenance required, but usually those bridges will last long beyond our time. And as you could tell, Kings Creek Bridge, it has required practically zero maintenance. So we're gonna extend, it'll be there when we're all gone to our Heavenly Father, so, yeah.
So, you know what, I walk, I bike, not so much run anymore around the Breezy Hill, or walk, Ben Gill Park, and specifically through this area. So whether it's I'm walking my dog or riding on my bike, I see families crossing through the area, whether it's using their bike. Last time I was there were mama, and she had 2 kiddos. One was walking, one was on he was like maybe between 3 to 5 years old. So he had his training wheels, and they were going through this area. So it was warm, so there was no water that was standing, so that was good. He did have a little hard time, getting through that area. So what I do consider, this being a safety concern, maybe it's not, a high priority on the safety concern when we compare it to different projects. I was looking at ways and, now I'm walking around from, let's say, the point where the bridge is proposed to be located, around the fence, and then I'm kind of, if it's a great sunny day, not wet, well then, hey, I'm walking through the grass there. Maybe if I have a kiddo on a bicycle or someone in a wheelchair, then, I'm still walking through the grass if I'm getting from that point over to the softball field, or just to sit in the bleacher area. So wonder, well, hey, could we put a sidewalk in the middle of, from the parking area over to where you have the seating area, and thought, well, most parks probably don't have a sidewalk that go right in the middle of the soccer fields. And I don't know, maybe there's something out there in other communities that we could replicate to still allow someone in a wheelchair to navigate over, or we look at, how do we extend the current sidewalk that goes from the Excel field over to the playground area and the pond, to where, we improve the streets, or add for a sidewalk that goes along maybe the southern end of the softball field, or maybe we cut through the existing park area to allow for someone in a wheelchair to drive through. So I am looking for opportunities to improve accessibility for everyone that comes to the park and enhance safety. The first time the dollars for this project were brought around, I thought, oh, that's a little high. I was thinking we could just probably put just a sidewalk. I wasn't thinking this is going to be a bridge. I had thought about what could we do to solve this issue before it even came to the Paddock board. So I'm glad to see there were some thoughts and attempts to have a solution put in place for these families. The prices is high when community members hear about it, but some of the questions that I want them, or some things that I want them to know is, the lifespan. What does that mean when we, look at that price into what it costs per day to have something like this in that section. It sounds like, overall, the paddock board does not want to move forward in using funds specifically for this project, because we do have a lot of other projects that we want to expend funds towards. I'm also a little hesitant about the cost of the project, so I'm trying to think about it in terms of, what does this mean? What does this cost me, daily if I'm expending funds? If I'm expending these specific funds now.
Well, one of the things I can say is, in seeing the current condition of the transition from the Excel to the soccer fields, what you see today, visually, you're going to say, oh, all we need is a low water crossing. But keep in mind, there's a column there that we need to do some drainage work, because it has silted over probably 6, 8 feet. So you're not gonna wanna walk through the grasses from the Excel to the soccer fields or the softball complex. So that's one of those things that you can't see it today, but when we do the drainage work out there, you're gonna go, they need a bridge. And the last thing I'll share with you is the economy. You all know the economy better than I do, but I do know that from a construction standpoint, the cost is only going to be more. Will we ever be in a prime market that we can get it done cheaper? From the way things are looking, no time soon. So, is it a project that, yes, I'm very encouraged by this project. I'm also encouraged by all the other things that you all brought up. But have you ever been to the soccer complex during soccer events? I have, quite often. You're talking about numerous people you wouldn't imagine. We're there Saturday mornings, Sundays, Fridays. Where would we put these people? How can we safely transition them? Because that's what you're gonna have to deal with. We're gonna have to deal with it. So it's all up to you, and I support whatever decision you make.
Thank you.
To God be the glory.
Acknowledging that this bridge will cost us more in the future, acknowledging that the parks plan calls for more connectivity around Ben Gill, I make a motion to table this discussion until we can have a joint meeting with the Parks Board and prioritize some of these projects. And I'll entertain.
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Up next on our agenda is a discussion of the downtown projects and an update from Mr. Sims.
So lots to be talked about here. Dawn's got a PowerPoint presentation for me. I'm going to honestly tell you that if I didn't go quickly through this presentation, you would be here eating lunch with me. So it is going to be kind of a sprint. And I will tell you, there's so many topics embedded here. I need you to use this sign for me. If you've got a question, say, hey, dude, stop talking. I have a question, because I'm going to go from one topic to another real fast, and we may as well just take questions as they come, okay? So interrupt me, not a big deal. All right, this is a presentation that I actually altered because I was giving it to some folks involved with the Regional Transportation Council and the Land Use Committee over at COG. It's always good to make a presentation over there because there's always staffers there who might have to pick your project in the future. So we were in a group with a couple of other cities being celebrated as doing a great job on sustainable development and land use transportation efforts and that sort of thing. So already being recognized regionally, and so this is just a little snapshot of the kind of bragging points I like to make when I'm reminding people about who Terrell, Texas is. The next slide here is, there we go. This is, again, y'all know your downtown plan, but this is a good way that I like to talk about the questions that we're dealing with right now. If we don't have a historic courthouse, how do we anchor downtown? Can we walk from one side of the railroad tracks to the other and make it feel like we're in the same city? We know that's not the case right now. And could we support downtown with a dedicated funding source for capital improvements? Heck yeah, that's why we have a Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation. Here's all the topics I'm going to dig into. I won't read this list to you, but just looking at it, we've got a lot going on downtown, and you guys are the tip of the spear to make all of that happen. Here's the zoning downtown. The turquoise, aqua, whatever you want to call it, in the middle, that's the old CBD zoning. That's what's been in place for years and years. The sort of peachy cream color surrounding it, that's that new downtown district where we rezoned a whole bunch of parcels, and then you can see the rest of the zoning around it. We do have an effort right now that I'm trying to find funding for that would give us a overlay district from State Highway 34 Bridge going off to the east and going from Rockville going off to the west, because we probably need some better architectural controls on US 80 and land use controls on 80 on those two little fingers that go out from from the core part of downtown. We do have a consultant engaged to look at some of the architectural standards around the town square. That's part of our town square project. So lots going on there, and I don't mind telling you that zoning is going to continue to be a very important element of making sure we get the right things done in our central area. Here's the little shot that puts together the Town Square project and the Complete Streets project and the Quiet Zone project. You got to stare real hard to see your Quiet Zone crossings on this map, but they're there. On the west side, you've got Southwestern Christian College and a major new entryway at Bowser. We've had lots of good meetings with Southwestern Christian College lately about helping them with some of their safety and access problems. We think we've got a configuration for Jack Evans coming into Bowser that's very, very different than it is now, which will be a great safety improvement down in that area and a very helpful thing for us in our scoring for our quiet zone. That configuration of Bowser is going to be difficult to build because it takes the angle out of Bowser. If you drive by now, it's actually hard to see into where the college is, partly because Bowser's a little bent at the railroad tracks. And this takes that angle out and makes it more of a straight shot. So there's actually some land acquisition that would have to be done in order to make this possible. But there's also a desire to do a free right turn into Bowser to make that entryway a little bit cleaned up. So that's a very important part of it as well. Over on the state hospital side, that is a new entryway. We have met with Texas Department of State Health and Human Services about that, met with Keith Bell about that. That's an expensive project, but there is vacant land there now. And so we may need to do some land banking out in that area so that we could change their entryway. It's no secret that everybody who goes to work, and that's 900 employees at Terrell State Hospital, drives through a residential neighborhood. And I would offer to you that that's a bad idea, and it doesn't help them manage their security. And we think that that would be a much preferable situation if we reoriented that to everybody, employees, visitors, maintenance trucks, everybody who goes to Terrell State Hospital entering off of a new entryway on US 80. There is a museum idea associated with the state hospital, and part of the notion there is perhaps that could be brought up to be on US 80 so that you might think of it as the retail functions of the Terrell State Hospital, of which there are a few, maybe could get brought out to US 80 and have a little bit of a presence there. And that's a long-term project, but again, that's what we're trying to do now. We're trying to lay the framework for downtown Terrell 20, 30, 40 years from now. So again, I won't belabor this particular slide because it's the combo pack. Here's the quiet zone study. Lots going on here. I've got a, I don't know, probably a 50-page report that's 99% done, sitting in Steve Rogers' office, that identifies the basics about what to do with every single one of these crossings. We are exceeding standards because that's an important part of getting funding for it. We have a grant that we can apply for quiet zones that we might be able to apply for. Might have some eligibility there in October, and whenever we see a grant opportunity, we're just going to run and try to go get it and deal with the consequences of winning if we win. We do think that's around $12 million worth of quiet zone improvements right there, and it's been my goal for a long time to figure out a way where we can get a grant for somewhere around 80 to 90% of that. Probably more likely to be on the 80 to 75% range, but we'll go chase grants that might be up to 90%. Here's an example about what quiet zones would look like. You've seen a little bit of a presentation of this from Kimley Horn, but just for reminder's sake, this is Virginia. So the north side here is sort of what you might think of being as the left-hand side of the page, and the south side is the right-hand side of the page. So the railroad tracks in the middle. We're designing everything we're doing so that when, not if, but when Union Pacific double tracks through downtown Terrell, our quiet zone will be resilient to those changes. We do not want to lose a quiet zone because we built our median channel 90 feet and we should have built it 110 feet, right? And if we build those median channels the right distances up front, we'll be resilient to the double tracking and we won't lose our quiet zone. You can see this creates a lot of places where right now you have free movements in the South Alley, where we eliminate those free movements in the South Alley. If you look at what's happening with green on this page, we're blocking the South Alley behind the Shell Station, and we're blocking the South Alley behind Cowboys. Well, we need to do that because you can't have intersections next to a quiet zone intersection. When you're going to have a railroad crossing, what they're seeking in order for you to get the right number of points and make that crossing truly safe is you don't have a bunch of uncontrolled driveways right next to your quiet zone crossing. So that necessitates quite a few changes there. You can see, yes.
I'm sorry.
Nope, I want to be interrupted here, guys.
I'm not real sorry. I wouldn't have interrupted you. But I was at a meeting recently in downtown Forney, and I was, you know, the horn, the train,
Right, yeah.
you know, they lost their quiet zone. I don't know where they are in getting that back, and so.
They have reapplied, and they are working on getting approval for making some additional structural changes to make up for the mistake that happened over there.
Okay.
And I don't, it's probably not a good use of y'all's time to detail that. It's a lesson, though, which is quiet zones are fragile. They are not a guaranteed forever sort of a deal.
That was kind of the point of mine.
Yeah, Washington, D.C. bureaucrats look at your quiet zone. They run it through an algorithm. They say it's good enough. And every single year, they check it, and they make sure it still meets the points. And if it doesn't, you don't get a quiet zone anymore. They're very serious about watchdogging quiet zones at the federal level. And so my answer is, we are not going to build a minimum standards. And when somebody comes in later on, 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the line and says, hey, could I have a driveway? Hey, could I do this? Hey, could I change that? You say no, because you've made investor decisions here. And that's what I will come back to. If we want people living downtown and we're going to put a downtown library and we're going to have lofts and all that sort of good stuff, and we want to have live music downtown occasionally, you're not going to do a quiet zone and then say, oh, okay, come on in and break the quiet zone rules. Once we shut a median down or shut a South Alley crossing down, it's done. And that's a very important part of the commitment you have to make here. So the big red thing here is a raised channel. Those can be anywhere from 8 inches to 10 inches high. So that really prevents a car from leaping over that. So you got crossing arms and then channels, and that really helps. But imagine that on Catherine or Adelaide or Francis. That means you're going to sever the South Alley at those locations, okay? So the South Alley will still exist, but the South Alley will become a one-way operation so that you enter the South Alley and exit the South Alley, and you don't drive from one side of downtown to the other along the South Alley. That's a very important concept point that we need to keep reminding people of. So anyway, that's a schematic, and we have lots of these, and we'll have a report on the website soon that shows you that, and we will also be including some discussion of this in some town hall meetings that we'll be doing soon on this topic. So complete streets, again, we're trying to put complete streets, South Alley quiet zones all together. We're starting to reach out to TxDOT, the County Union Pacific COG. You guys have already assigned your paddock representative on that group. We're asking some folks in all of those other organizations to join on a project review committee. They're going to be very intent on, are the details right, and can they be grant eligible, and in particular, will TxDOT buy off on it? It's not going to be an easy sell to get TxDOT to agree to make major changes on US 80. They're going to look at it solely from a transportation standpoint. So the point of the project review committee is to get them involved from the get-go. We do have a contract in place now. Again, I think you guys have heard me say this. The primary ideas are do a one-way couplet, westbound on Nash, eastbound on Moore, eliminate the left turn lanes or the medians, reduce the lane widths or remove lanes, reduce or eliminate parallel parking. I think your downtown business owners will come at you with knives if you remove parking, and I think TxDOT will come at you with a gun if you remove lanes. So we really don't have lots of options going here. It's going to be a very difficult thing to manage through this, but we are doing all of the detail elements of it right now. Traffic analysis is beginning. Traffic counts were already taken. Surveyors have done work on all of this already. And again, we're hoping that we can earmark you guys doing some borrowing in the future. When we find out we get a grant, which we hope we will, we'll come to you and say, okay, are you guys willing to borrow some money so that your borrowing can be the local match for the grant? So that'll be a big moment, but I always want to say that's where we're aiming here. So tell me to get off the bus if you want to get off the bus. Yes, ma'am.
No, I'm on the bus.
Good.
Parking.
Yes, ma'am.
So just like construction costs are going up, real estate values are going up, as we look at our need, current and future, for downtown parking, is now the time to get serious about paving some of the vacant lot. I mean, I always come back to the Rockwall Moore Avenue across from Matt's office, or catty-cornered. You know, we have talked in this group about paving that for parking. Strategically speaking, is it too early to start spending money in that area?
I would say that in executive session, I'd like to talk to you in greater detail on parking acquisition. I'm going to show you a map in a minute with some red on it. There are already some parcels in the downtown area where it was identified for the Town Square project that we should purchase it for parking, and those offer letters have gone out with appraised values to say, hey, this is that dollar amount, and we'd like to purchase this from you. And we probably are 4 or 5 months away from completing that process.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So here's some next steps. Kimley Horn is under a contract for $1 million. It's county bond reimbursable, so great job, county. Again, community engagement's a big deal. JBJ Management is part of that team. And then here's the list of things going on right now related to that project. Again, here's some progress. Nice little PowerPoint slide here from Kimley Horn for us. They've kicked it off. They're evaluating grant opportunities. Like I said, data collection, traffic counts are complete. They're doing the boundary, the topographic surveys. They're trying to get ready for their first project review committee. They have done level of service analysis on downtown intersections. Nothing downtown right now is like a catastrophe of traffic from the big picture standpoint, but we are gathering that, and what we'll be doing is saying, okay, TxDOT, this is our baseline of traffic on Nash and on Moore, and if we change traffic on Nash and Moore, here's the level of service in current year, and here's how it is different in 2045. So 2045 is going to be our analysis year. City of Terrell will be around 43,000 people in population in 2040. We'll throw a couple extra people in to get ourselves up to 2045 because that matches the regional modeling requirements. And we'll say, okay, if we do no turn lanes, here's what it looks like now. Here's what it looks like in 2045. If we do one-way couplet, here's what it looks like now, here's what it looks like in 2045. If we do nothing, here's what it looks like now, here's what it looks like in 2045. You do all of those model runs, and that helps you prove to TxDOT and COG that you've got a good sound plan and it's really workable for traffic, and so that'll be part of the program as well. I'm going to tell you, you're going to start seeing Rochester from Spur 226 to State Highway 34 showing up on our plans. And part of that is because that isn't an existing connection, but we do feel like that would change a little bit of traffic patterns in the downtown area. Fewer people would be exiting on High, Some of those people would move over to exit on Rochester. Some of the trucks that go all the way down to State Highway 34 or get lost on Delphine or get lost on Blanche would have a little bit easier time migrating around if we had a Rochester connection. And then that also provides a really good view shed entry to everything we're doing with Town Square. So you're going to start hearing more and more, and that analysis has already come out of these efforts to try to figure this sort of thing out. So, when I skip there. A couple of next steps. Again, more quiet zone efforts. We've got environmental reviews that we need to get done, and just continuing on through some of those steps. Here's the, I need new batteries or something. There we go. So this is the quiet zone zones map. You've got this new urban entryway on Spur 226. I think that's a much more important than we give it credit for, because if you're coming from Interstate 20 to visit downtown Terrell, then you're going to come up Spur 226 or Virginia, or you're going to come on Rochester. So we've got to make sure that also makes sense as a complete street. And we included that in the work scope, but really don't talk about it very often. But you might start thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute here. Complete street and nice place to walk isn't just more. It really also needs to include Spur 226, and that also helps us with investment opportunities in our downtown area. Here's the British Museum. We think it's going to be around $5 million. Removing the overhead electrical downtown in the South Alley along with it is $3 million. We think we'll put those together. Right now, we are waiting for some input from the British Flying Training School Museum on some of their interior finish-out needs that they'll pay for separately, and we'll have a combined bid packet that will essentially be, here's your museum, and here is your remove the overhead electrical lines, and here's the interior finish-out stuff. We'll get all those numbers back and divvy out those costs to the appropriate places. This is primarily funded by a tax increment refinance zone borrowing that was done about a year ago, and so we're really anxious to kick off construction on this project. Here's the South Alley. The British flag is where the museum is. I bet you couldn't guess that. There's 2 vacant lots just to the south side there between Francis and Adelaide. We are trying to pursue acquisition of those from Union Pacific so we can get parking on top of those, having a lengthy argument with Union Pacific as one does about purchase price and conditions. Also, I would tell you that you can see the old depot on this map on the south side that fronts on Virginia. Across the street from that is a staging area owned by Union Pacific. One of the things we're trying to claw out of Union Pacific is we want to own that, because they just habitually put junk on it. And so whenever they're doing maintenance anywhere from, I don't know, it seems like if they do maintenance from Mineola to Mesquite, they put their staging area right here in downtown Terrell, which is very frustrating to us. So part of the reason we'd like to purchase that is to get them to stop doing things on it. And then also it's good additional downtown parking. Might not be the most convenient, but it is getting rid of an eyesore. And so we think that's an important part of that as well. That entire green area is what's going to end up having water and sewer ripped up in it and replaced as we do the water and sewer improvements that were funded through the Texas Water Development Board. So when you think about your phasing of things in the South Alley, it's really similar to what we did with the North Alley, except it's more complicated. We've got to have Atmos come in and rip up Atmos line and replace Atmos line. We've got to go in and put water line in and sewer line in, and we've got to, in this case, take all of the electrical between Francis and Adelaide down and put it underground, and then refeed all of those old buildings with new fire risers, with new water taps, with new electrical connections. So that's a very major project. We have received questions about, why did the city fund a mural of Jamie Foxx in that ugly old South Alley? And oh, there's just so many things wrong with that comment, right? It was privately funded by an investor, owner of the building, who knew how much was going to happen that was good in the South Alley, and how South Alley is going to turn into a showcase. And getting ahead of it, that private investor, I think his name's Matt, decided to go ahead and get ahead of that and get a mural up in what will turn out to be one of the best and most prominent locations in in downtown Terrell. South Alley is not a thing we should be ashamed of. It's a thing we're reinvesting in, because those building entryways turning to the South Alley side, that's a great benefit and a great redevelopment opportunity for us. So here's the electrical scope notes. I've said most of that already. And again, it's safety, it's market value. If we build that British Museum with the proper balconies on the south-facing side of it, as is currently in the plan, then you could literally walk out the 3rd floor, open the door, step out on the balcony, and you can just hold on to those electrical lines for safety, right? So we're not going to do that. We're gonna make sure that we're doing the right thing there. Facade improvement program, so we're regularly doing that. We've got the Bass Rutledge building, which is wrapping up. You guys should be very proud of that. That's an incentive that you guys were involved in. The Griffith building, the Lyric building, the Anderson building, all of those have different elements of facade improvements in them. The City Council recently approved 2 demolition grant projects, one for the demolition of the old Oddfellows building over here. So I know that came before you guys for conversation several different times. We really made the decision that they weren't doing a nice facade. They were complying with planning and zoning regulations to build a historical facade in downtown, and that it would be more appropriate, instead of taking that to you guys for funding, to bring it forward to the City Council for funding for demolition. City Council agreed to that, so that's been passed. That's about a $42,000 expense. And then we have another project, which is the Artesian Lodge building, which also has a demolition of the asbestos on the inside of it, not the building. The asbestos and the environmental hazards on the inside of that building, those are also subject to a City Council grant that came through our public-private partnership program. So thanks to the City Council for that. And again, it continues this theme of, you guys are part of the puzzle. You're not the only people doing, or the only group spending money downtown. So lots more work to be done on that. I think that we'll be approached soon by a couple of other folks looking for grant opportunities, and we'll just keep talking to them and figuring out what makes sense and what needs to be done and what needs to come to you guys. Again, here's the Anderson building. You guys know lots of update with that. My main message for you here on the Anderson building is they're just in the waiting mode. They need to move hard bodies over to the Lyric building, and so we've got a water line issue and a couple of other repairs to the Lyric building to finish out. Then hard bodies moves, and then this building goes under a major reconstruction project. So they've got their architects and engineers all geared up to do that. We've met with them, their architects, their engineers, about some of those details, and really complicated topics, or maybe not complicated, maybe not even snazzy or fun, but topics like, how are we going to make sure that the restaurant elements that are in the basement floor get their drain uphill to the sewer pipe that's in the south alley? And so there's a little method for doing that. It's not very complicated, but we've made sure that we've got the infrastructure downtown for them to plug into that. The other thing you can see on the south side of this building is, hey, look, this picture is probably about 60 years old, and that's when those transformers that are up there were brand new. Isn't that sweet? So part of the project that is funded out of the North Alley side of things and is partially funded by you guys as well is to, as part of the Anderson Building project, take and remove, we won't get rid of the overhead lines in the North Alley, but we are taking the transformers out, because then, again, that's a safety issue. Nobody was thinking at the time that photograph was taken that it was pretty easy to open the back window and reach out there and get to those things. But they're old, they need to be removed, and we've been working on acquiring an easement from the Wells Fargo drive-through so we could put a ground transformer in, similar to the one behind American National Bank. So there'll be one over there, and we've put conduit, empty holes for conduit underneath of the North Alley, so we can string the wires back and forth as needed for that change. So lots going on with that. I know it doesn't look like today some major changes happened, but they're really trying to do the prep work to make that happen. Here's the Griffith Building. We had an excited land owner of the Griffith Building get ahead of himself and put a fence out there that is a nice-looking fence, but he did do it without a permit. And so we had a nice little chat about the importance of being a little more methodical. But kudos to them that they're running quickly. This is not necessarily the most recent rendering about what they'd like this to look like, but it's pretty similar to where they are now. And we're trying to finalize that with their architect. They'll be applying for a building permit soon for making that courtyard experience and to do the rest of the interior remodel to make Griffith Building a restaurant. They are really hoping to open that as a part of our sesquicentennial celebration. So they're hustling. We're trying to help them hustle. And as we get further updates and information, we'll make sure we keep you guys in the loop on that. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question on the green space here. Did we end up with the city? I mean, are they designing and installing everything on that green space, or was there a piece of it that was?
No, well, they get a $75,000 incentive that's part of your paddock board package. So that's a paddock board contribution when they're done and when that looks good. And when that's a useful downtown restaurant courtyard, then they get that $75,000 incentive payment for accomplishing that work. And it, by the way, it's up to $75,000. They have to actually spend the money and prove it out and all that good stuff. But yeah, that is part of the package, and it's designed so that there'll be a lease to them of that, a ground lease of that land to them. So that way they'll have rights as landowner or leasee to put people on trespass. They'll be able to say, no, you can't do that here, blah, blah, blah. It won't operate as a city park where I'm obligated to do certain things for public park purposes. They'll be able to have that be theirs. And I think that's a better way to protect the dining experience out there right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
So lots of great progress on that, and every time we have a meeting between now and the day they open, we're going to give you what details we have available on it. So we'll keep feeding you information on that. Here's some of the mural information, and I'm almost going to tell you that I hope that if you ask a question that Allison will pop up and answer it. We're setting a day for a mural walk. Here's the brand new mural downtown of the well-known Jamie Foxx. People already come to visit downtown to look at the murals, so lots of good progress there. Charlie Bullock was out recently, who did the Frank Ray painting on the backside of the American National Bank Service Center. That building is going to get a little update to it, a clear coat on it to make sure that it's more preserved. Mrs. Gillespie has been out looking at the mural that is the old automobile that faces Rockwall, and that's one of the oldest murals we have, and consequently it's one of the most faded. So she's developing a battle plan with Allison about how to freshen that up and maybe get the word Terrell on it somewhere so that there can be a little bit more excitement associated with that mural. And again, lots of different murals out there. This is really fun. We have a joke going at my house that the one with boxing gloves is my daughter because she boxes also, but it's not really her. She didn't model for that. But it's great, it's historic, and you can see on the left-hand side of that shot, that's actually the Chapman Building. So to me, this is bringing the character and interesting to downtown that people look for in authentic communities. You're going to soon see the Chapman Building torn down and the British Museum replace it. So what a nice combo pack. We've got the old Mississippi Building, Lyric Building, and then the Chapman Building, all turning into British Museum. And then we've got a couple of other really good remodels going on that block as well. So it all works together to make that happen. And again, that $23,000 was money that was spent partly out of that Anderson Building incentive from you guys. And I believe there's the Sonny Gillespie one. Let's see here. There's the Charlie Bullock one. And then this isn't set or anything, but we're working on what to do with the deed wall. So there's some bids there and some pricing there. This one you would think of as being sort of the corner of South Alley and Adelaide is basically where this is. and this isn't these photos, that's simply the work of the artist. This would be something associated with the sesquicentennial event itself. There's what I'm looking for. This stenciling is the proposal for what to put on everything you guys funded. And I think this is a really good moment to stop down and say, I think we need to be doing a better job, and I need y'all's direction on this. You funded a variety of Breezy Hill improvements, and there's no sign out there that says funded by Paddock Board, and here's the members of the Paddock Board who funded it. You funded the lights at the soccer fields, and there's nothing out there that says who did that, right? And then this mural stenciling that would go on different murals and placed where the artist thinks it's the right place to place it. I think that helps tell people the story about what's the funding source for this, who gets credit for this, and that sort of thing. So I think that we might want to start using this in a variety of contexts and maybe tweak it. So I would like to get some feedback on, well, do you even like this design? I hope you do, but if you don't, you can blame Allison, and we'll have some conversation about it. So can I pause here and get a little conversation on, do you even want credit? I kind of guess that it makes sense, because that's communication to voters about where their money's going. So I kind of like the idea, but maybe you guys want to be a bit more in the background. So any thoughts on this topic?
I am totally comfortable with taking credit,
All right.
because we're taking the blame if it's not liked, so. And the only reason I say that is we were standing around talking, and I was hearing how wonderful it was that certain entities put all the lights up in the soccer field, and I went, oh, did they?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. Okay. I will ask, oh my gosh, there's no Glenn Caldwell anymore. Preston Harris gets to do it. Preston, make sure that me and you and Glenn talk about a marker at the soccer fields related to funding for the lights, okay? Yeah. Thank you.
Any other thoughts on this logo? Good. It looks like we're about to move off the mural conversation.
Yes, ma'am. So let's talk murals if we've got other topics, yeah.
I'll open the conversation. You know, we had discussion last time about it, and at this point, we have allocated $250,000 to, I believe it's specific to downtown murals, or is it city murals?
I thought we defined it as downtown murals, and that's
Okay.
consistent with your funding. I can't.
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to spend your
Right.
Paddock money outside of that zone anyway, yeah.
Right. You know, we have received great feedback from the Jamie Foxx mural that has gone up. I know Allison is, you know, deep in discussions with some artists about renderings for some of these other walls. I think, you know, were we under the impression that $250,000 would fund 5 murals, 10 murals?
I think part of it is sizing. Remember, a couple of the murals weren't intended to be big at all. We were hoping to do a series of, in some cases, rather small murals. So right now, it's just a matter of getting out there and getting pricing on them and that sort of thing, so.
My opinion, but I want to hear from y'all. I'm just trying to get the conversation going, and it doesn't need to be a long conversation because
Yeah.
this has been voted on, but just to give feedback for the progress that's been made. When the Piñas covered up the Lyric mural, personally, I was excited about it because I don't think these murals have to be there for perpetuity. There's been some discussion about easements so that the city can control the murals in the future. Personally, I'm kind of opposed to that because I like that the Piñas came in and freshened it up. They made an investment in our town that's in accordance with building standards and everything else. You know, I don't know that you know, I can talk out both sides of my mouth because if we're making an investment in these murals with sales tax dollars, then yeah, they do need to be there for a while. However, I'd be okay if somebody came in and freshened up. I'm not gonna be specific as to which ones. I don't wanna hurt any artist's feelings. But I'd be okay if somebody that owned the building that some of these murals are on came in years down the road and wanted to do something different with that side of the building. So then I start to feel a little bit silly about us paying for these murals when it's been shown that private investors, private building owners will put up the cost for these murals. So I'd like to hear from the board, now that we're starting to see some progress, some movement, some ideas about these murals, kind of what your feedback is for the city.
I will say on the easement, I see what you're saying about locking it in. The benefit to an art easement is establishing responsibilities more than anything else. If we put a mural on the side of, let's say Paddock would have paid for the Jamie Foxx mural, and somebody were to spray paint. Well, I'm the building owner, so I need to maintain insurance, I need to fix that building. If someone were to run their car into the side of a mural that we just did, we need to maintain insurance. Now, in the easement, you can have both parties maintain a certain amount of insurance for those, which is nice. But it's a way to protect that investment. If we start to do what we're seeing done and things hold up, some of these buildings, and the Piñas, I hope they're here forever. They might finish these 3 projects they have. There's 10 others that go on, and then they profit and they make money and they leave. And if they leave, the next person may not like this mural and they paint it over. And if that happens within 5-6 years of us spending $30,000, yeah, that's a pretty big concern. And an easement is a way to do that, but the best way to kind of control that is in just the agreement in general. You know, if you put this mural up, it needs to stay for this long, and if you replace it, it needs to be approved by this person. Just, you know, like you say, we're spending taxpayers' dollars, and they could sell that building tomorrow, and the next person's like, I really hate this, and they just cover it up with white paint, and nothing could stop them. And that would be funny. And I agree with you. I like the new mural they have. It's a little different. I would have probably done something with more color on it, but I like how it turned out. I mean, I really do. It was funny to read a lot of the comments on social media, which is a dangerous little place to go, but some people were upset. Oh, that's my kid's favorite mural, and I hate that they're erasing our history. And a few people were silly about it, and a few people were rude, and a couple were really rude. And so I just posed the question, I'm like, I love the history of Terrell too, and you are part of it. You've been here 50 years, and in those 50 years, what have you contributed to downtown? Because the history you like seems to be watching these buildings never change and nothing happened to them, and they just go away. And they get real quiet real quick. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of interactive murals. And we weren't sure how the Jamie Foxx would go over. I talked to a few people to make sure the pictures were good and they liked the message. I mean, we have really been shocked. And I don't know Debbie's last name. She's okay, two doors down. She almost lost her mind when that mural started, because this guy is a graffiti artist and his outline is an artist. It's in his head. It's words, and just, it made no sense. And she was convinced somebody just graffitied her alleyway. And it was really funny, and I told her, I was like, not only will you love it when it's done, you're gonna start parking your car across the street, and you're gonna start having stuff here. I was like, and she did. I mean, I saw a picture of her on Facebook playing the piano, which was funny. It's had a lot of traffic. I wish I would have done a better job of finding a way to track it, because I'll just have people send me pictures. Randall Noe parked cars in front of it and took pictures as an advertisement. I mean, there's just been a lot of things. Now, the artist that I chose, I kind of held him to his price to a point. It was a little more than I thought, but he priced me 6 months ago, and I mean, he's really taking off. And so because of him, we're getting a lot of traffic, people that just go to see his artwork. And if you look at it like artwork, it's, you know, some people like Jackson Pollock, some people like Picasso, but most people just like having something very expensive. Well, if he becomes a very well-known mural artist, then the Jamie Foxx and the Terrell are secondary to a lot of people, so it's just a whole other source of traffic. People want to see a Juan Velasquez mural, and he's a very interesting dude. And I think he's doing one for the Piñas on the side of that restaurant. And I've seen some ideas, and I mean, if he gets anywhere close to some of the ideas, it's going to be.
Yeah, let me pop in right there and say, for clarity's sake, one of the reimbursement eligible expenses on the Griffith building is facade-related things. You guys are not in on that for a huge amount of money, and I probably will say it incorrectly off the top of my head, but I think that your agreement with the Peñas includes about $75,000 for general Griffith rehabilitation expenses, of which the mural would be eligible, but let's face it, there's $300,000 worth of rehabilitation they're doing to that building. And then the park, so that's a separate thing. So we know they're gonna put a mural there. We're trying to coordinate that with the improvements to the outdoor dining courtyard. And so there's some thoughts there about, well, where do trees go? Where do trees not go? What's the view shed for the mural versus what's the shade for the outdoor dining? There's a little balancing act going there, but that'll be a privately owned mural because they want to own the thing on their wall and they don't want to have somebody preview it for them and say that that's okay. In contrast, the mural that's going to be on what I would describe as Houston Smith's east-facing wall, that's going to be adjacent to a public parking lot. It's the worst-kept secret in Terrell that we've made an offer to purchase the Cowboys building and or gas station. We're working through that process now. And so that is probably your most appropriate place for an art easement because we'll have a public parking zone, we'll have a piece of artwork that will be our most expensive piece of artwork done by a very prominent artist, and that whole complex is really not one that you're going to want to say, oh, okay, if Houston Smith sells his building, somebody else comes in and paints it white. That's not going to be a situation we want to be in. So that's an example where you would have an art easement, whereas on the Peña building, you really wouldn't be doing an art easement. My expectation on the Peña building is no matter how great the first mural is, I have an odd feeling that 3 years later, they're going to paint a new one on it to keep it fresh because that's their philosophy of keeping things fresh with their investment. So,
Any other thoughts on murals before we move on?
Interactive over historic is my vote, but I know that's not a popular opinion, but
well, remember, one of the things that's on the to-do list is to try to figure out a location downtown that would be a mural in motion. And mural in motion means that I'm actually putting a video display and I'm shooting something onto a wall. Well, what do? This is probably not the best idea, but I'll say it anyway. Well, one of the things that's been thrown out is we pick a blank wall downtown and we video display on it. Here's little bitty Eric Bishop, and then, you know, you can see these little montage deals where people grow up, right? So you do a little growing up thing through different movie roles and all of that, and the face or the body just kind of morph from one to another. Well, if you have a minute-long sequence of that rotates on a regular basis, then, well, maybe that's something you have on the weekends, and maybe it's static with something else on weekdays, and maybe blah, blah, blah. So the advantage of, I'm going to paint that wall plain white, but then I'm going to video display something on it. That's something we're investigating, and Allison's working with a company that's actually local to Terrell that has some capabilities on that. So if we find that that's a solution, we might say part of your mural project is a video system that projects rather than just a static painting. So that's part of the discussion as well.
If you're ever in San Antonio, right by the Riverwalk, and you want to take an Uber or just walk a couple of blocks, if you go to the Catholic Church right next to the Riverwalk and look up their website, you can see it's like at 9 o'clock each night, I believe, that they play, they project onto the front of the church images, of course, related to the Catholic faith. So it's pretty neat. And they have tables that you can sit out and shade trees for if you're, well, that's for during the day, but to kind of, that's the one I'm familiar with. So Juan Velasquez, we did talk, we're not related, not many of us with the same spelling of that last name in the general area. Very neat and yes, becoming quickly famous in the North Texas and in Texas area. I guess when Tori brought up a really good point about, you know, how do we protect the investment that we're making into these murals? So I would certainly, you know, say to staff that, you know, looking at ways, whether it's, you know, the agreement that was mentioned, putting something in the agreements that we do for the murals, or
I want to learn a little bit more what this means about, easements in regards to, murals, but yes, having some language, something that helps bind those.
Yeah, and I'll also give you the background on it. When we started this 10 years ago, it was hotel occupancy tax funding through the Terrell Downtown Association. Terrell Downtown Association was they were suggesting, they were doing the work, they were trying to make sure that people accepted it. And almost every landowner or building owner at the time in that process said, I'm not signing anything. I'll let you put that on my building, but I might not like it. I might want to paint over it. I might da-da-da-da-da. So the lay of the land 10 years ago of owner resistance, that world's changing, right? Now what we get from owners is more of, I'd like to have that. So in that changing environment, I think it would be easier for us. If we'd gone 10 years ago and asked somebody to give us an art easement, we'd have never gotten it and there wouldn't be a mural there. On the other hand, now, I think the time's right for that, because I think you're gonna have a handful of these, and I think it's gonna be up to the Paddock Board to say, I want my art easement to say that that's gonna be there for 5 years, or 10 years, or 7 years, or whatever it is, because y'all will need to make a policy decision about the length of time you want that to be untouched, so.
Quick idea for Allison. I think there's very few people that know the meaning behind these murals, like the story of the artist and the governor on the side of the nursing home. QR codes are everywhere. Are y'all thinking about where they can snap a QR, without even having to get out of their car large enough to say, why did they put a Jamie Foxx mural in Terrell? Okay.
And I will say, he's such an artist that I tried to convince him to put, there was a quote the EDC used on the billboards after he won the Academy Award, as something like "my home." And I was like, can you put this? He goes, no. That messes up my, and I was like, enough said. But I will say the only truly negative feedback I have, which I don't agree with because I don't like the attitude of my Terrell, your Terrell, our Terrell, this and that, but everyone's entitled to their opinion, is why was Jamie Foxx put there and not in Jamie Foxx's neighborhood and not on the side of his barber shop? And my answer was very clear, is because I don't own that, but if they'll sell it to me for cheap, I'll be happy to put another mural. But that did let me know, the side of Houston's building, to put a lawyer who has very little to do with Terrell, and I know Houston's an attorney, so I know that that's special to him. I would be hesitant to do that without at least talking to, the people that had the same issues with me. Like, why is this here? Why is that? I'm like, because that's going to be a very prime, beautiful mural. You come in, you're going to say, what's that? Who's that? And I remember a few things you said about it. He was Rosa Parks' attorney. He served on the board at Southwest Christian College for a time. And I think there were other ties to the civil rights movement. But just without being able to project that at 40 miles an hour, I just, being a mural lover, I think, golly, that wall could be something I want people to pull over and use that parking lot to take pictures with that mural. Will they do it with this guy? I don't know. But that would be my only consideration, is if we're gonna start putting murals up and we're gonna add to the historic murals, then really, they can be historic, they can tell our story, but try to find an artistic element that stops people, pauses. They stop what they're doing, they wanna take a picture with it. And the mural walk can help with that, but that's more of a segmented use. I want, daily use, daily traffic. Pull over, take a picture. And, frankly, some of these guys, some of these artists, the one that did the Lyric Building, the one that you have in here with that Dirk, some of their artwork is amazing. And considering he did that Jamie Foxx with freehand with spray paint makes it even more amazing. And so that alone will have art appreciators stopping just to see, how did you do this? But I do, that's a lot of money, and it can pay for itself really quick if it draws people in, if they stop. So that's my thing. Just really, really make sure we have something that's going to invoke a response. And a visual response is great, but just I want to stop.
Thank you. Are we ready to move on?
Okay. So let's talk Town Square for a few minutes. again, not to beat it up too much, but I think these three places that we toured with City Council a while back really paint the picture about what we're doing here. Sugarland Town Square on the far left side. I need to kind of switch that photo out because the idea from Sugarland Town Square is first floor is a restaurant or a retail shop. The second floor might be my parking garage. The third floor might be an office. Fourth and fifth floor might be residential. There's a mix of uses in a vertical environment, okay? And then the McGovern Gardens part of it, that's a park in Houston that is close to their arts district. And you can see the council standing in front of that, sort of blocking your view of it, but that's okay. But the idea is dress it up. Have a big green area that is very, very well maintained, looks good, fountain, topography to it, whatever it might be. And then the Rice University campus really just tells the story about, look at the massing of the buildings. When you've got 300 feet from one side to the other side, when you've got 900 feet from north to south, that's a big enough interior area that it's not intimidating to have a 5-story building on it. So we need to be careful on the residential edge, right? So we've got Francis as an edge that we'll have to be careful with. But when you think about the Adelaide side, a 5-story building on Adelaide facing Virginia, right? Then you start thinking about, okay, that makes sense from a massing standpoint. Likewise, Broad is the northern edge of this. Broad, and then some land we're hopefully acquiring from Union Pacific, then railroad track, then South Alley. Imagine if that other side of that building was facing the railroad track. Remember that part of the design concept here is that the blue here is building footprints. So the train noise is both buffered from you by the creation of those buildings on Broad, and it creates the safety of the interior courtyard. But also, when I'm downtown walking around, I'm not going to miss the fact that I need to walk across the railroad tracks at Catherine and go enjoy whatever's there. And I'm not going to sit here and quote exactly what the buildings that face Broad will be right now. I think that's a process we'll work through over the next few years. But whether it's just core civic use of library and that sort of thing, or whether we bury the library deeper in and more on the residential side and we get a mixed use environment up there, we've got lots of decision making to be made ahead of us. So how do we get this idea off the goal, off the point that it's on right now? Well, we're in land acquisition mode right now, and literally every landowner down there knows that they're in the middle of a land acquisition process by the city of Terrell. But the next step is really just the most boring thing. What's my biggest problem on the south side of the railroad tracks in this zone? We never built drainage. We have open drainage in every single street. Just to drive along Rochester, what do you see? You see a gigantic open ditch all along Rochester leading to State Highway 34. Just to close up Rochester and to start getting that done is a starter kit $9 million drainage project. So I'll be talking to City Council over the next year trying to find where's my money for the engineering of that project. And we're not gonna, that's not a paddock expense, but we think we have a source of funds available to start doing the engineering work associated with the drainage in this zone. And this is all about a do-it-right program. We want to make sure that we do every step of this process correctly and that we end up with something that isn't halfway. Oh, here's a nice building of a library, but I have to put a pond next to the library that takes up, you know, half of this land because we didn't plan the drainage correctly. We need a whole bunch of water in this area to get out to the east side of State Highway 34, north of Builder's First Source. So lots of work to be done on that, and we're very happy to be bringing that forward. If it's red on this map, then we've had a discussion with the landowner about making that surface parking. So you can see the Union Pacific there, Cowboys there, what you would say is Queen Donut there, and then a couple of the other parcels around in that area. We do have a more in-depth plan for additional parking downtown, but this is sort of the phasing about what we're tackling at this time. A last little design detail here is if we make our transition, do we and we'll study this under the Quiet Zone program, do we really end up with Catherine from South Alley to Broad being pedestrian only? That's an idea we're kicking around, and it has quiet zone implications and pedestrian implications. But if I'm downtown, remember, part of the harmony of what we're doing here is Catherine is our break between eastern blocks and western blocks, right? So if I'm at 200 east such and such or 200 west such and such, where did we start numbering the blocks? We started numbering the blocks at Catherine. So this helps us identify what's the middle of downtown, where's the center of the city, and all that sort of good stuff. So lots of good progress here, and again, Catherine goes away. There's no Catherine between Broad and Newton, and there are no streets between Francis and Adelaide as part of this project. The blue on here, by the way, as building sites is also tentative, because we've also had the conversation of, well, we may offset some of those in different ways than they're shown on this map, but as long as we keep the 900-foot by 300-foot interior green space, that's the goal. So lots more work to be done there. KSA is our group working on that. Council approved a $150,000 next step study. They're creating some standards for the new town square development, identifying funding options, architectural styles, developer guidelines, how we are going to sync in the correct location for the library and community center and senior center. Lots of outreach as part of that as well. 720 Design is the library group. We're trying to organize a tour of a couple of libraries that are down in sort of the Seguin, San Marcos, San Antonio area as part of TML this year, so we can look at some recently constructed libraries and get a sense of that. The library consultant recently came by. They're also, do I say library consultant? The 720 Design is working on our senior center needs assessment. They're working on our library needs assessment and our community center needs assessment. So that's basically the people working on the interior use of different parts of the town square. So they've looked at Senior Center. We've had Senior Connect involved in those discussions. What do they really need, and what's the philosophy? So as we laid out in our kickoff meeting with Senior Connect and some of the other folks helping us on the senior side of it, the concept is we don't want to have the place off to the side where we keep seniors. We don't want to have a little warehouse off somewhere where the seniors are over there. There's a lot of communities that say, we need to build something just for seniors, and they don't realize they're building something that is against the right way to approach mental health with seniors. You don't want to have one place off to the side where they don't get to interact with anybody else. You want them to be able to, if they're the kind of people who are mobility limited and they get dropped off and they're not going to drive, and they're in a walker or a wheelchair or whatever else it might be, or maybe they just don't walk very well, you don't want them to be isolated in one building. You at least want them to be able to walk over to a library. You want them to be able to walk to the community center. You want them to be able to enjoy the rest of what's going on. So we're trying to figure out how do you integrate that correctly so that you have both the things that Senior Connect is doing and other opportunities for enrichment for the seniors, so it's not just a like a meals drop-off or something like that. We want it to be much more meaningful than that for us. So that process is going on now. Those tours will happen, and there'll be some folks invited from the community to start giving us input on how we design all of that correctly. So again, just sort of overview on all of that. FY22 and FY23, community input, again with JBJ and with 720 Design, planning, making those partnerships, land acquisition ongoing right now. I'm only just barely starting a round of public talks on this. We're going to schedule me and maybe some others to go out to Rotary, Kiwanis, and the Stallings Neighborhood Association, and just any group that will have us and give basically this presentation. And you'll see some town hall meetings associated with putting all of these in a combo pack idea. We don't want to present it to the public as, we're doing library, come to the library meeting, or we're doing complete streets, come to the complete street meeting. We want to bring people into something that looks at it holistically and says, here's all these different ideas. What sort of combined feedback do you have for that? So again, FY '23, FY '24, again, community input, you're gonna see some demolition starting, engineering starting, securing partnership funding. FY '24, FY '25, again, more of all of that sort of thing. And my hope is that here soon we'll be able to find a way and a time in the city budget so that we can do the borrowing associated with getting the drainage done right and making that the big start of that. I think in my mind, as we're doing our 10-year capital planning, which is an effort that Jay Arrows and I work on, that we're starting to be able to slot in, well, that's realistic amount of property value growth over this period of time. That's going to match. This is a funding source for this. This is a funding source for that. So all of these things I think are very doable, but part of it will all rely on what partners do we make, because we don't want to go to Terrell taxpayers and say, here's a $100 million bill. We want to go to Terrell taxpayers and say, hey, this is our partner for this 10 million. This is our partner for this 20 million. This is our partner for these other things. That's incumbent upon staff to bring you partnerships when they bring you big ideas. So we'll keep working on that. So that's my thought, and any other questions or comments?
Any questions for Mr. Sims? All right, if not, we'll move into a discussion on the FY '23 budget.
So on FY '23 budget, on August the 4th and August the 5th, the City Council will have its budget retreat. We're going to talk to them about ideas, where we're going, that sort of thing. I told you before, I think we'll have $19.1 million in our sales tax projections for FY '23. That's going to translate into a little over $1 million for the Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation during FY '23. I like very much the idea that you do a joint meeting with the park board so you can get a sense of where they want to go, where you want to go, what you can do collaboratively. Before Glenn left, I was whispering in his ear to get that set up in the next couple of weeks. From a timing standpoint, I'd like to do my budget retreat with City Council, and then in the week or two after that, have you guys have a joint meeting with the park board, let you guys talk through issues with park board, make sure you can come back and say, all right, you're going to deliver a lot of things in FY '23. You got Anderson things, Griffith things, mural things, and bathrooms at parks. Lots of that's going to get delivered during FY '23. So you're going to have a successful FY '23, but all of life is planning for what's next, right? So I want you guys to be comfortable with what your next range of improvements might be. And like I said, I've got an issue related to your budget I'm going to talk to you about in executive session as well. And then can I just jump right on into the city, discuss and consider city facilities? I realize there may be a burning desire to say, I want to fix the basketball court at Ben Gill. I want to fix, blah, blah, blah. I really would like for you to have your meeting with the park board so you can be methodical about that. I'm going to talk to City Council about pros and cons, about different ways the city might make some investments in a few things. If I look at, I'll just take basketball courts as an example. I've got a donation that came in to, I say a donation, a arm wrestled out of a development agreement payment that came in related to Breezy Hill. So we know we need to resurface some stuff at Breezy Hill, and then there's a different donor who wants to put a fancy schmancy surfacing on top of new concrete at Breezy Hill. So a lot of that is in progress right now. I know that the Arlie White basketball court needs some preventative maintenance and some upgrading. I know the Kings Creek basketball court's in the wrong place, and the park board endorsed a park plan in 2017 that said, you know what, nobody plays on it because it's hiding and it seems far away and maybe a little dangerous and too close to the hogs and blah, blah, blah. It needs to be up closer, it needs to be redesigned, da, 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 da. So I've got an effort associated with that, and that has already come up during this meeting. Beautiful new playground at Ben Gill, right next to an ancient thing with a dangerous fence that needs to get torn down, da, 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 da. If nobody pays, I'm not trying to push into anything. I'm just saying if we don't find a funding source for really completely redoing the basketball court at Ben Gill, I probably just need to take the fence down because the fence has had it. And I can have a basketball with no fence, but I can't have a fence that hurts people. So we've got some issues like that to talk through as well. So just on basketball courts alone, there's a complicated conversation about what needs to get paid for and what's the best funding source and who wants to be a partner with different parts of that. So we'll have some of that with the city council on the 4th and the 5th, and then come back and see what you guys have to say. I think that from a staff standpoint, I've got an engineer's report saying, don't use that pool slide again. Finish the pool slide this year, be done with it, be happy it lasted. But there's too many things that look like they're about a year away from falling apart. So it's not dangerous today. You can go slide on it. I slid on it. I've tested it. I weigh more than most of the kids on it. So it's safe. It's okay. But it doesn't need another year of use after this year. So we're going to, and it's probably, I would guarantee you, it's cost prohibitive to go in and fix it. We need a new one, so I'm gonna have to present that problem to City Council on the 4th and the 5th and decide a course of action related to that. So there just continues to be lots of things on the docket there, and we want to be methodical again about how we do it. The tennis courts need some preventative maintenance. I probably can do that in FY24 or FY25, but they're still basketball courts. They still sit out in the sun every day. They still need preventative maintenance and regular rehab. So that's a quick overview of that. I know there were other thoughts about why discuss and consider city facilities might need to be on the list, and I'll just open it up for discussion and see what kind of questions I can answer.
Now that we know we're gonna have a joint meeting with the Parks Board, I think that'll be the perfect time for us to brainstorm. You know, my hope is that along with the parks plan, that the ideas come from our members and their members. City staff, I think, looks at this so much and so often, and has a plan, which is great, but I'm hoping there'll be some good ideas that come from the group that has been asked to do this as well. So hopefully all of us can attend that and have some great dialogue. I hope the venue for that will be conducive to conversation. When we went to the meeting, and I don't know the point of the meeting at Trinity Valley where the presentation was made about our audit, I don't know that that conversation was, appropriate for that meeting, but that venue is so spread out, it doesn't breed conversation. So the closer we can be together, I think the more comfortable everybody will be speaking up. So thank you for that presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
And at this time, we'll adjourn into executive session in accordance with Section 551 of the Texas Government Code to discuss Section 551.087, deliberations regarding economic development negotiations.
Okay, so I'm going to start